The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing well. It's a busy weekend, gorgeous weekend of weather. Got the grill fired up. Some bad NBA was on, depending on your point of view, if you're a Laker or Celtic fan. And oh yeah, things all got bright and shiny for the Nebraska quarterback picture for the 2024 recruiting class. We'll dive into it as Daniel Kaelin committed shortly after our weekend edition show. And we'll check in with his head football coach at Bellevue West, Coach Huffman. Going to be with us here in about 15 minutes. We'll talk to Coach Huffman about this entire process as it has been the chase for one, while you had the homegrown talent committed elsewhere. And that changed on Friday with the flip to being uncommitted from Missouri, and then the complete flip to Nebraska on Saturday. So we think Nebraska got a good one. Excited for Daniel Kaelin, and I know his head football coach, Coach Huffman, excited about that as well.
And congrats also to anyone who took the under on the line of 7 days before a commitment to Nebraska.
Yeah, I was thinking
Friday.
Sunday. I think I said Sunday.
You said by the end of the weekend. I said by Monday. So, yeah, the under 7 days hit pretty easily for you.
The under hit really immediately. We were off the air at 9, and I think the commitment came through at what?
10.
10. So, yeah, there you have it. So that is something we'll spend time on. Really good sit down and set up with the hopes and dreams of the Nebraska 335 and how it will affect the Big Ten with Coach Tony White's defense. On 3 did a great profile there. We'll spend some time on it. Charlie McBride next hour, Mr. Blackshirt, a Monday with Charlie. And then Jay Moore completes the Blackshirt Hour on Monday. We'll get some of Jay's thoughts on the PGA Championship. Jay is the Nebraska Amateur Golfer of the Year. He's incredible. Jay's tremendous. Someday Jay will be making a putt on the tour. I hope that for him. But Jay will talk some defense with us and some golf as well. Numbers to get in can join us today on Hail Varsity Radio, 489-1240. 489-1240. Can also email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. And as always, communicate with us as we are on the stream. You can watch the show, the Hail Varsity YouTube channel, the Hail Varsity Radio Twitter feed, also there for you at HVarsity Radio. Catch Coffee and Cream weekday morning 7 to 10 as Damon and Andrew get you going, and then we'll take you home. Can also find us on KFOR Facebook and Twitter if you want to check those channels out. So a lot to dial up. Did you do much umping this weekend?
I did just last night, actually. I was out at an undisclosed location somewhere in eastern Nebraska umping a baseball game, and I had some fun doing that. Made some good money. Other than that, it was a pretty slow weekend for me. Yeah, not much to update on.
Junior umped on Sunday. Got screamed at by parents.
So
he's doing a good job.
I had a nice chill game. So
did you? Okay.
You always love that on a Sunday evening. So that
what
was
did Junior's
money.
buddies told an irate coach, and I think they were doing 12U. I mean, he really warned him, and the opposing coach was going to start piping up again, and then Junior's buddy just shot the coach a look.
Yep, that's classic.
After a warning, and it was omerta. It was silence.
You got to give that coach the old restrict him to the dugout warning. That's the best kind of warning, where you warn him, restrict him to the dugout, and now he can't come out and coach third base, and he can't come. I mean, 1 foot out of the dugout, and you're ejected from the game. That's a good move to use.
Versus handing him a chain and physically tying him to a radiator, the verbal warning, you are not to get out of the dugout.
Mm-hmm. You're fully allowed to do that at high school ball and in youth baseball.
You're just flexing, huh?
You say, hey, you are restricted to the dugout for this remainder of the game. If you step 1 foot out of that dugout, you're going to be ejected. This is my courtesy to you. I could have ejected you, but instead I'm going to restrict you to the dugout. It's a good move. Junior should add that one to his bag of tricks on those 12U coaches that think that this is the World Series.
This was a parent. His buddies were doing a game across the way, and they were getting yelled at by the coaches. So parents and coaches doing a bang-up job, I'm sure. So I don't know how many verbal warnings athletic directors and coaches have hurled at Kevin Warren over the years, but I wish I was a fly on the wall with some of the Zoom meetings, not just during the COVID season, but beyond. As Kevin Warren left the Big Ten commissioner's office, we said, why do you do that to be president of the Chicago Bears? It's one thing to be high up in an administrative fashion in the NFL. You left that to come run the Big Ten, and now you're leaving. On his way out, there was the perceived victory lap. Well, here's a multi-billion-dollar deal for the Big Ten. Oops, Tony Petitti letting it be known that there is some issues to discuss. Specifically, what you're allowed to and not allowed to do as conference commissioner. You're not allowed to give away the conference championship game to a competing network when your league and conference title game is owned by the Big Ten network, which is owned 51% of the shares are owned by Fox. So if Fox did not want the Big Ten championship game, guess what? They can sublease it, for lack of a better term, to another network and make it happen. Commissioner Warren did not communicate well as commissioner. And sometimes that happens. You have a CEO, a boss. Communication may not be their strong suit. It may be strategy. It may be finding the right hires. It may be guiding whatever the business or entity is through a mess. There's all sorts of strengths and weaknesses. We all know folks that we love and have a ton of respect for that communication isn't great. It just isn't, okay? And that is going to be, that is a lot of times not a downfall per se, but it is a constant source of consternation for just really high-level talented companies or entities. Communications you have to be either improving on it or get good at it. Fair?
Yeah.
If you're the top dog, you have to get good at it. You have to know the fine print because maybe you didn't create it, but your job is to take up the baton and run with it. Jim Delaney knew the fine print. Jim Delaney knew the way to navigate between the chancellors and presidents and the athletic directors and the coaches and make everybody a buttload of money. Mm-hmm. Here comes Commissioner Warren, and clearly not good at his job communicating, clearly not in lockstep with some of his flagship universities during football season, during COVID. He wanted to make a statement and let's cancel the season. And no one else followed. And then you got to backtrack and look like an idiot. By the way, that is going to cost schools $25 million. Now, you do the math. There's 14 schools right now. You know, a little shy of $1 million apiece, but you're still having to pay back if you're Nebraska, if you're Iowa, if you're Minnesota, if we go down the list, right? And some schools are in better position than others to do that. But Elijah, you're going to end up owing Fox $40 million because you gave away the Big Ten title game for 2026 to NBC. How does all this happen? And here's my thought, and I could be wrong, but Commissioner Warren's like, well, I'm the commissioner. I can do what I want. I'm getting this deal done. Well, you need your TV brains in the room to get you through the parts either you don't get or don't care to understand. Tony Petitti at least is a TV guy, and he'll get this sorted out. But this is a pain in the neck, and the bar tab right now is $65 million. And last thought, and I'll shut up. Commissioner Warren's going to want a bonus. Every year, Jim Delaney had in his contract a bonus. And you get bonuses, especially if you sign long-term or short-term lucrative deals. Jim Delaney did that twice. And the final insult to kick Warren out the door was his disagreement. He wanted the Pac-12. He wanted to keep rating. I think he wanted to expand. Washington and Oregon. If you can go get them at a cheaper dollar amount like they did with Nebraska. Nebraska didn't get full payment till year 3 or 4 in the Big Ten. It took longer. Meanwhile, Maryland and Rutgers got paid right away. You really got to handle it better than he did. And it was a buffoonery of missteps. And this is a bad taste in a lot of our mouths all the way back to COVID, but it just proves some incompetence. Overall, you can nut this if you're the conference. But honestly, this new money, this new multi-billion-dollar deal you signed is money that, all right, that's in our checking account if we're Nebraska. I'm going to use some of it to expand the South Stadium. I'm going to use it for projects on campus. I'm going to use it to pay for my new football coach and pay off my old staff. I mean, I would think that's within use. I think you can write a check out of that account because you're supposed to get it from your conference because you've granted them your media rights. This is funny, but the Big Ten would have been better off hiring Jim Phillips instead of Commissioner Warren. They didn't, and now you've got a new guy cleaning up a mess.
I wonder from Kevin Warren if this is incompetence as you laid out or if this is intentional, the lack of communication, the lack of transparency. Because we know.
That's a good question.
We knew after 4 to 5 years.
Did he just want to go out and do it his way?
That's what I'm saying. Kevin Warren was all about himself in this role. It was all about pushing his narrative that you know what, Kevin Warren's a good commissioner and he's going to get a promotion someday. Because Kevin Warren, yes, he struggled mightily to communicate with the presidents and chancellors of the universities. You know who he didn't struggle to communicate with? He was just fine communicating with his media partners, the TV networks. He never had a problem showing up for a meeting or an interview on the TV network.
Well, he
laid out his plan.
He had some positive PR he needed from them, especially after COVID.
So, and I wonder, do you sign this deal, push it across the line, knowing
you're out the door.
That there's problems in it and that you're going to be out the door? And you know what? Before those problems come to light, you can sell this as, man, I just got the Big Ten, this brand new, shiny, beautiful media rights deal.
On its surface, you're swimming in Scrooge McDuck money. It's awesome.
Yes.
But you can't give away your conference title game if you don't own it. You need to know as commissioner whether or not you own the conference title game. And this, I mean, $3 million, let's just, the $65 million total, 25 back to Fox for the COVID year and lost revenue, $40 million you owe for this misstep to Fox.
I mean, this strikes me as a guy saying, I'm going to probably take a promotion here to another job in a couple of months. I'm going to push this across the line so it's going to be on my resume, and then it's going to be someone else's problem to fix all the problems.
And who's to say this didn't help him get hired by the Bears? So, I don't know. Can you withhold the last 2 weeks of his paycheck as damages? I don't know. The Big Ten will figure it out. You got a TV guy running it. That's good. We'll spend some more time on the 3-3-5, but a good sit down on Nebraska's defense here with what is special or potentially special about the Nebraska defense. And On3 did this. DJ Pickrell was kind of highlighting. We'll talk with Coach McBride about this and Jay Moore as well. But listen, the big concern out there is the size versus the speed. You're sacrificing some size to add some speed. You're adding a third safety. If you do it right, and Coach Tony White's defense has done it right where he's been, I look at Syracuse. You know what's nice is the fact they were top 25 defensively in passing yards allowed. They were top 25 in rushing yards allowed. And they are all about all sorts of crazy confusion pre-snap read. They're going to make your quarterback slow down and go, what am I looking at? Your running back, when it comes to pass pro, may not be 100% certainty. But the net is what it's supposed to do. It's going to be that capture net, and you saw a little bit of it in the spring game when it comes to what their philosophy is, and that is to attack offenses from all different levels, and that speed factor's very big. It reminds me a lot of where Nebraska wants to go. Getting after the quarterback, stuffing the run. You need those big bodies on the interior, clearly, but be fundamentally sound, be able to get tackles, force fumbles, and get those TFLs, man. You look at those drive charts, you have a penalty or a negative play, you're more likely to have to punt than pick up those recycled yards. When we talk about attacking, one of the best offenses in high school football is Bellevue West. Their quarterback, Daniel Kaelin, committing to Nebraska. The head coach, Coach Mike Huffman, joins us next to Hail Varsity. It's a Monday, and we're presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. Schmidt and Elijah Herbel. We welcome in head coach for Bellevue West, Mike Huffman, joins us to talk Daniel Kaelin. Coach Huffman, do you hear us okay? Thanks for the time.
I hear you great, man. What an exciting time to be a T-Bird and a Husker.
I like it. That's a good backdrop, my friend. I mean, the backdrop is nice, all those teams. And Coach Huffman, take us through the last week, this process and ultimately the commitment for Daniel Kaelin to Lincoln.
Well, I'll take you back a little farther than that. We had the opportunity for Coach Rule to come in January when he was coming around. And I've been in the business long enough and have enough respect for those guys that they have a very difficult job with recruiting. But we have a difficult job with high school, making sure that our players are taken care of. I asked him point blank what his plan was for Dylan Raiola and for Daniel Kaelin. And without hesitation, he was in a swivel chair in my office, and he kicks it back a little bit. He leans forward, and he looks up right in the eye, and he says, first of all, we'd be ecstatic and lucky to have Daniel Kaelin as our quarterback. But right now we're hard on another prospect. And if that doesn't come through, we will be relentless in the pursuit of Daniel. And man alive, that Monday, Dylan committed to Georgia. Coach Foley had me on the phone within an hour. They set up a visit for Wednesday afternoon. Coach Satterfield was out in California doing some recruiting, so he had to get flown back in. Coach Rule called me Tuesday morning. He was in Carolina getting his house packed up and getting ready to rock and roll. And they held true to their word. And both Coach Foley and Coach Satterfield came to our workouts on Wednesday, watched them spin it around. Now, the funny thing was our two stud receivers and even our next two were all at state track, because we're not playmakers in slow purple. We're playmakers in purple. And so they're all at state track. And so some of these guys catching. Now, a couple of them now are going to be the next guys everybody reads about. But, yeah, a lot of them were like DBs. And you remember the old EA Sports game? You played DB for a reason because you can't catch. Man, two balls literally went right through a dude's hand and busted him in the face. One was on a hitch and one was on a slant. And I'm not lying. I was sat, and I'm just, like, giggling. I'm like, well, he can spin it. And so, they had to do some stuff and get it all figured out. But we knew pretty mid Thursday we kind of knew. And so, but he wanted to do things right, Daniel. And Coach Drinkowitz did a very, very good job with Daniel. And that's kind of why when he got it down to a Final Five, that's why he picked Missouri, because Coach Drink was so highly involved. That was a very difficult conversation for a 17-year-old. And I said, you just be upfront, be honest. I've got good friends in the business. They're men. They'll be able to handle it. Yes, they'll be sad, especially to be a quarterback. But he didn't want to go get any further until he talked to Eli personally on the phone, and that was tough. And my phone was blowing up all Thursday night because Missouri coaches were calling, what do we got to do and everything. I'm like, guys, he's wanted to be a Husker since 8th grade. And I'll be real honest with you guys, not everybody's like that anymore. You saw the commit video, okay, and all the pictures of growing up. It's not like that all the places. Like, Isaiah McMorris isn't even from here. I mean, he's lived here for quite a while, and he does like Nebraska, but he lived quite a long time in California. Dae'vonn's kind of, he's been just outside in Plattsmouth, but it's been a while since Nebraska was the Nebraska you and I knew from when we were younger.
Coach Michael Huffman's with us here at Hail Varsity Radio. And Coach, you mentioned the fact that he's wanted to be a Husker since 8th grade. Is that something that this Husker coaching staff knew that they had in the back pocket? There's a quarterback in Omaha that's wanted to be a Husker for a while, or is that something that was a secret to them, that they didn't know the interest level of Kaelin in Nebraska?
I think it was a secret. If you really had to rewind back to that 9th grade year, his recruitment hasn't been very fun when it comes to Nebraska. He is involved in a national circuit of quarterback coaches that are very, very highly regarded, Elite 11 guys, things of that nature. And the Florida State commitment offer really came out of nowhere. I remember I was sitting down in my basement. I was right, at the preseason, right after these camps, and all of a sudden I get a call from Daniel that he got an offer from Florida State. I'm like, man, you haven't even played for us yet. I mean, you're the JV quarterback, right? And a lot of these things are projection, and he, for his age, he really spun it well. Well, then that night Mario called, and he offered him a scholarship, and I'm like, okay, that's awesome, but it was kind of out of nowhere. But then the next couple of years there was no contact, and it actually got pretty sad. And I remember when Daniel was a sophomore, I started rotating him with the kid that ended up going to Morningside, and both really good players. I said, Daniel, I don't know why there's not more communication, and I'm sorry. It bums me out too. Hopefully that changes moving forward. And it really took for Coach Whipple to get here. And Coach Whipple loves to throw the ball, and he brought it up to their staff. Why in the world aren't we putting more attention on this kid? And then it kind of picked up. Well, then the heat with Raiola picked up, because it did for a long time look like that cat's coming. And right, wrong, or indifferent, people will argue about who they think's a better long-term quarterback. But, man, that kid is gifted. That kid is huge. He's got a cannon. And he's a legacy of one of the greatest Huskers to ever play. Mm-hmm. And a guy that for years has been coming back. I'm speaking of Dominic.
Yeah.
Right? So there were a lot of factors. And true to form, man, as soon as Coach Rule, the Raiola ship sailed, he was relentless. I was pretty impressed. I appreciate his honesty, and I know Daniel did too. And they did a good enough job. We knew where we stood, and that's okay. That's
so important, but if you're to put a percentage on it, is it rare? Is it 50-50? How
10-90?
Okay. There we go.
We got good relationships around the area. We're really close to the Iowa staff, Kansas, mm-hmm. Kansas State. A lot of the like people don't realize this, but the Kansas and Kansas State staff, they have huge ties to UNO. So we've known these guys forever, and then they go up to North Dakota State. Well, we know North Dakota State's here. Mm-hmm. Some of them went to Wyoming. They recruit here. And then Leipold's staff went to Buffalo. Mm-hmm. They still recruited here. So we've known these men for a long time. Those schools is pretty straightforward, but a lot of these other schools coming in, because Huddle has made it so kids. I remember when Isaiah McMorris was first coming over, he's like, oh, my goal is USC. I'm like, USC doesn't recruit in Omaha. Well, they do now. Yeah. Huddle's really changed it, and the flights, when Monken, I know he's with the Ravens now, but when he came in last spring to watch all three of them, he literally took a private jet. He had his morning quarterback meetings, took a private jet to Epley, got a car, came to Bellevue West, turned around, and went right back. It's just a whole different world than what it used to be.
Coach Huffman's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Daniel Kaelin committing to Nebraska on Saturday for 2024. And Coach, I'm interested from an offensive style. I think Coach Rule is, yes, he wants a mobile quarterback, but he's also not so rigid with the talent he has in a room in a specific year. Tell me a little bit about Danny and his ability to bring that mobility portion to an offense.
Well, credit where credit's due. When Coach Foley called me on that Monday night, I brought that up. Because I went down to practice and then I watched the spring game. I really like what Jeff Sims is doing. And Danny's not that. It reminds me back, when we used to recruit all these runners that could throw there about 15 years ago. And could they really throw? That's a whole other story we won't get into.
It was wide open play action, right?
Right? You got to find a thrower that can run. And Coach Foley was quick to let me know about the round peg square hole. And then he obviously talked to Coach Rule, because Coach Rule brought it up again on Tuesday. And then Coach Satt brought it up on Wednesday when he came. And they brought up a guy named Spencer Rattler at South Carolina. And they actually compared those guys, Spencer to Daniel, because Daniel, after his sophomore year, I said, I don't care if you even touch a ball this winter. You need to get more mobile. You need to get more explosive. And he spent a lot of time with Bronson Marsh, former Husker, out at Legacy, and that's what they worked on. And he is much different. If you really dive into his tape from last fall, our line wasn't very good. And now they're a strength now because we played 11. We have 9 of them back, so we're really excited for this fall. But, man, poor Daniel, man, he was hiding. CPS was calling me a lot of Friday nights, right? So luckily I'm not in jail. I'm still here, and I got a quarterback committed to Nebraska. Guys, this is how cool this is. And, there are still a million Husker fans. My very first quarterback at Bellevue West, 2013, lives down in Arizona now. He texts me on Saturday, Coach, you've got to be ecstatic. You finally got your Husker quarterback. Guys, there's so many widespread rumors that I don't like. I love Nebraska. I'm sitting at a Husker. I don't know if we can see this here. I've got a Husker table that I'm doing this. It's ridiculous. I have a Husker chair in my office, which I forgot to put my T-Bird Afghan on this spring. And so, Iowa's in there, K-State. They're like, really, Huff? Really? You're going to do it? Like,
they show up and there's a Nebraska table.
Right? But, I've got enough kids. At the end of the day, I tell them, I try to teach them, look at the offense. And that's why I had to ask those coaches those questions. Look at the depth chart. The depth chart looks beautiful for Daniel. Sims is going to be a stud. If he's a super stud, he leaves super early. If not, Daniel's going to be a redshirt. He's a winter grad, so he'll be there. He'll be there this next spring ball. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things add up. Harburg, I know he's a great athlete, but probably more of an option guy, maybe that runner that can throw that we've been talking about. But it's setting up pretty.
Coach, was there ever a point you talked about you finally got this Husker quarterback, you finally got one. Was there ever a point where you gave up on that dream with Daniel, with him committing to Missouri? Was there a point where you thought it was over? Or did you always think that Nebraska was going to come back around?
Well, recruiting is so difficult now because of the transfer portal. There's not as many spots for high school kids. So we really, really coach our kids. If you feel the right fit, you need to take it. Mm-hmm. Or if you don't feel like something is playing out. And in 100% honesty, late January, early February, I thought the tea leaves looked like Raiola was coming. And so I said, Daniel, you need to, and 4 of the 5 head coaches were in our office in January. So we got to see them. We got to know how interested they were. That's where the conversation with Rule happened. But PJ Flexdown, Clark Lee, Drinkowitz, his other, and I don't even remember who his 5th was, but their coach wasn't there. I don't know. I think he just fell out of 5 to B5. Mm-hmm. It was really a top 4. And I said, Daniel, you can't wait. You don't want to get left out. And I've been telling my receivers the same thing. They both have that official third week in June at Nebraska. I said, you got to line up everything where that's the last one, and you'll know by then, and you need to make your call. Otherwise, you're left to wonder if there's even spots going to be open. People fill up. These scholarship offers aren't infinite. They got to figure if somebody else takes them, yours is gone.
Coach Michael Huffman with us, Bellevue West, Hail Varsity Radio. Daniel Kaelin committing to Nebraska. We wrapped up the weekend show, and boom, there was the announcement as he decommitted from Missouri on Friday. Coach Huffman walking us through the last week. Coach, I've got a couple more questions. We've got a hard break. Can I have you pause for a minute? Is that okay? Do you have a couple minutes? Great. Yep. Coach Huffman's going to hang on with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. Can email the show, chris@hailvarsity.com. We'll get to your comments here in the stream. Our first segment, we opened up with some comments on Kevin Warren, a little bit more of an expose on the Nebraska 3-3-5 defense and recruiting so big in this state. And it's nice for Nebraska fans to have a Nebraska kid in the class, specifically at the quarterback spot. Head coach Michael Huffman continues on with us as we move through a Monday. Charlie McBride, Mr. Blackshirt, with us in the 5 o'clock hour. Jay Moore joins us for the Blackshirt Hour. So more with Coach Huffman, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you Monday. It's Hail Varsity presented by Currency. We say hi to Coach Mike Huffman, Bellevue West. He's with us for a little overtime, an extra segment with him. Coach, I wanted to ask you about McMorris and Hall and just the recruitment process for them. I know there's some heavy hitters coming in, and you alluded to last segment just their trip to Lincoln here in June. Take us through the process for them, and you did such an awesome job of kind of laying out January to now, Nebraska and their involvement with Kaelin. Tell me how Nebraska's been involved in some of the other schools that are chasing down McMorris and Hall.
You know, there's a story of two complete opposite paths. You know, Dae'vonn has been with us since the beginning. He busted on the scene as a ninth grader, got multiple offers. You know, so his has been pretty steady over the years. And what it looks like is, you know, over the course of the winter, the December, January, right before that February signing day, coaches come in, and because of their age, you know, they would just say hi, they get eyeballs on stuff like that. And the majority of the conversation would come through me, but they can't start having conversations at that point till September 1st, their junior year.
Right.
Whereas the difference is Isaiah just got to us last June. Decided he wanted to, you know, be a receiver. He was in a run-friendly offense that didn't throw it very often, and you know, so his was much slower. And then, you know, the season was really unreal for both of them. Isaiah had, I think, 1,200 yards. Dae'vonn had 900 yards. Both had double-digit touchdowns. You know, so it's nice when you have two guys on each side. Well, Isaiah started picking up. It was actually a guy named Coach Cooper. From Texas Tech, and he is now, or excuse me, Coach Jones, Emmett Jones, from Texas Tech, and I had to get him in my office, and I had to video him on the door with tape and squish his hands on fingers, and it's all got to be video too. It can't be pictures. And then so, you know, Texas Tech decides to offer him, and then as we all know, the rest is history. All the people start looking at it because they all follow each other. All these coaches know each other. Mm-hmm. Mickey was very, very interested, but you know, if you see these two boys, although they're both fantastic, they both look totally different. Isaiah's 5'11", 6 foot. You couldn't touch him in a phone booth, right? Dae'vonn is 6'3", 190 pounds. Looks like he should be on a statue outside the Coliseum. I mean, but also runs I think he ran his PR this year was 10.62. Isaiah's was 10.65.
Jeez.
So they have this speed that these guys look for, but totally different pass. Last spring for Dae'vonn was insane because Danny too. I mean, all these coaches were every single one of our athletic periods. Guys were there watching him throw. Isaiah had that again this spring, but most of the guys, his quarters were really over the internet. You know, making calls. You know, these guys call the head coach. They got to get out and visit. They got to reciprocate the interest, and you know, they both haven't kind of narrowed it down. And you know, 2 months ago, I would have said that it would be a long shot that these guys end up in the red. But this young guy, Garrett McGuire, has just absolutely slayed it in their recruiting. And honestly, I think right now, you know, I know USC and Nebraska are Isaiah's top two. Arkansas and Nebraska are Dae'vonn's. Tennessee has been a late suitor for Dae'vonn. Oregon's been a late suitor for Isaiah, but it's really interesting. I'll be interested to see if those schools that are coming in so late can make up that ground. But, you know, I say that, but how long has Coach McGuire been on staff? And look how much ground he made up. Mm-hmm. This guy, he's slick, man. He can talk to these kids. He's good stuff.
Tell me, Coach, with Hall and McMorris, their relationship on the field, do you see these guys pushing each other to be great? What is that like? It's rare to have two Division I type receivers in addition to a Division I quarterback on your roster. Well, what is the relationship like between those guys as the pass catching options for Daniel?
That's a fantastic question because honestly, last year it wasn't awesome because, you know, I want you to put yourself in a 17-year-old, 16-year-old kid's shoes and be Dae'vonn Hall, who's been we had Keegan Johnson, then we had Caden Helms and Micah Riley. Now he's going to come up. Those guys are gone. He's going to be the guy, right? Well, then this new guy comes and moves over into Bellevue, and he's going to play. And Isaiah he lit the world on fire. He set state records. He had 93 catches, 1,200 yards. Now, Dae'vonn still had a phenomenal season, but he was a little dejected, you know, because, you know, again, he's a young man. He's not a grown man. So you have to talk and coach those guys through those situations, understanding when you have a stud on each side of the ball, now the defense has to make a choice. Shoot, we played Gretna in the playoffs. They decided when we were in trips or 4 over our 3, they were 2 over our 1 on the other side. So we were forced to run the ball. And we did okay, but, we were on our fourth tailback by the time the playoffs rolled around just because of some freaky injuries. So I'm guessing people are probably going to do that this year. With our passing offense, we scheme things to hopefully get the ball to the right guys. But ultimately, and that's what makes Daniel so special, and he really progressed as the season went on, he's reading the defense. He's not, I'm going to throw it to Chris here because he's my guy. That ain't how this works, man. He's got to read the defense. And if it's a check down to Dae'vonn, or if it's a deep ball to Isaiah, or if it's an under route to Ben Goodwater, or whoever it may be, that's what he's got to do. And, his first 3 games, he threw 5 picks. I'm like, dude, this ain't going to work. Our starting quarterback last year threw 7 in 12 games. He only threw 2 more picks the rest of the season, and both of them went off receivers' hands. And they were like Danny Dimes, but they went off the hands and they picked them. So he didn't throw a pick in our last 8 games.
That's impressive. Coach, outlook, summer plans, what's on the radar for you?
Well, we got the week 0 again, which is awesome because we play Creighton Prep. They're another great program. And so last year there were so many people there. We're hoping that, but it really cuts the summer short, man. We'll give them the week off to get out of school. We get to it June 5th. Myself, I'm heading out to Kearney with Coach Martin from Omaha North and Coach Frenzen from Columbus Lakeview. We're doing the Shrine Bowl one last time.
Good, man.
We're going to let that rip and hopefully survive. And I see it looks like some rain out there, so I'll be bringing some ponchos.
Coach Michael Huffman, Bellevue West. Coach, you've given us a lot of time over the years. We love catching up with you again, and congrats to your program, to you and your staff, and of course your kids that put in all the work.
Thank you so much for having us, guys. It's always good when you guys reach out.
Appreciate you, Coach Huffman. Take care.
Bye.
There is Michael Huffman, head coach, Bellevue West, and just so much fun to talk to. We talk to him a handful of times a year. He's always so insightful with us. Guy's got a great gift to gab, and just love talking ball with him.
Well, I mean, it's incredible that in that, what was that, 15, 20-minute sit-down we just had with him there, you can see why his programs up at Bellevue West and why his football teams are always so good. He's knowledgeable about the game. He's a great leader of young men, and he kind of got into that with that answer with Dae'vonn Hall and McMorris. Like, one of the best in the state. It's always a pleasure to have Coach Michael Huffman on because that dude is just fantastic. I remember back in my high school days seeing what Bellevue West was doing and being like, wow, they got a good one.
Yeah, 11 years and counting for Coach Huffman, and does an awesome job. And yeah, I mean, you just gotta help the young men get through it. I mean, still 900 yards and a bunch of touchdowns is nothing to sneeze at, but really insightful information kind of behind the scenes with Coach Rule and Coach McGuire and Coach Foley and Satterfield. I mean, flying in special from California to watch this workout. So, I mean, that's how the process, and we've said it, but now you heard it from somebody in the room about how Coach Rule communicates, is super transparent, and just laid out, here's what we're doing, and here's what we'd like, and good on Nebraska to get back in front of Kaelin, and really cool that he's a Nebraska fan growing up. And Coach Huffman's right. It's not that there aren't Nebraska fans in the state of Nebraska. It's just not as easy to root for because of what the product on the field's been. You want to cheer for a winner, and Nebraska needs to get back to their winning ways. We'll wind down hour 1. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride's on the way in about 15 minutes. It's Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, it's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. We'll get more into the 3-3-5 defense, the on-3 profile on Coach White, and how it syncs up and looks to destroy the Big Ten. My words, not Coach's words. Thanks to Coach Huffman from Bellevue West. A good 20 minutes with him on Daniel Kaelin's commitment to that whole timeline from January to Saturday. And then an update on what is happening with McMorris and Hall as their recruitment is hot and heavy. A lot of big-time programs after those two stand out. So a fun first hour. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play is where you go for the podcast and can get the whole show, or each segment you want to just kind of pick and choose. All good if you want to go a la carte. The whole video always posted for you on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Go there, subscribe to that, and just great content week in, week out from Hail Varsity Twitter feed, also with radio at HVarsity Radio, and get your subscription. The yearbook is going to be out soon. Get your college football Bible if you're a Nebraska fan, the digital and the print, the yearbook and the digital, hailvarsity.com/offer. Brian comes in with the winning comment regarding Kevin Warren. And Brian's like, look, with R, and he's talking about Nebraska's experience in buyouts and early departures, UNL should be put in charge of conference contracts, but not hiring. Fair enough. Nebraska's got a new chancellor.
Well, not officially.
Okay.
There's the priority candidate has been established. He comes from Southern Miss.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be a month-long vetting process to confirm if he's going to be the guy. I got a buddy. I've reached out to him. He's yet to reply to me about he worked for Southern Miss down in the athletic department. Actually, get this. He worked for the Southern Miss volleyball team just before all the Brett Favre drama came down. He got out of that job about a month before.
So you've got that.
Yeah, so you've had to see if there's any report.
And Doc Sadler was at Southern Miss before he came back to Lincoln, and this is none of Doc's doing, but they were in such a mess. I do believe they were hammered with probation to the point where they were unable to play any out-of-conference games, and they played conference games, and then they were banned from their own conference tournament. I mean, there's some, dare I say, improprieties that have gone on at Southern Miss, not through this guy's watch. But I'm just saying, if you've put a coat and tie on and gone into an office at Southern Miss's campus, God love you, okay? Because it's not been easy or fun, but you've found a way through, so that's all right. Excited to talk to Charlie.
Oh yeah, I can honestly say I don't follow Southern Miss athletics or their academics as a whole all that closely. I don't know all that much about the new chancellor candidate. I can admit that.
It's okay.
I've reached out to my sources, and we'll see what they have to say.
No, that's totally fine. I just, because the chancellor's in charge of all of it. Mm-hmm. So that's why I was asking. Video sent to me from Uncle Andy. He was at the game where Junior's buddy issued one of them stern umpire warnings. I have to do a little more investigation on this here during the break. Hour 2 on the way, and Charlie McBride kicks us off. A Black Shirt Hour. Jay Moore on the way next hour. Hail Varsity presented by Currency.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back to you. It's Hail Varsity Radio. We're presented by Currency. For all your equipment financing needs, go Currency. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We are going to run down Coach McBride shortly. And we'll have Jay Moore coming up, part of this Black Shirt Hour 2 on Mondays. Big thanks to Michael Huffman, Bellevue West head coach, his take on how things went down with Daniel Kaelin, his commitment, and how Nebraska was able to stay in good communication during their 2024 quarterback chase. Some insight also on where Nebraska stands with McMorris and Dae'vonn Hall, two incredible talents that a lot of the who's who of college football, they're recruiting. Nebraska has a chance to see them up close and personal in June. So check that interview out, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. If you have a shot, do so. Full show or whatever segment you like. Numbers to get in, 489-1240, 489-1240. And can always email the show, Chris at hailvarsity.com. We have some thoughts with Jay coming up on the PGA Championship that happened. We touched a little bit here on the issue that Big Ten football's facing payout-wise. On the way out the door, Commissioner Warren left a few things undone, and the new commissioner coming in has got to clean up and fix. Also, the defense when it comes to Nebraska's 3-3-5. Elijah, let's talk about this, and we'll talk with Coach McBride about it here in a little bit. What do you envision for this first year? Do you envision a Nebraska football team that is challenged early with this new defense, or do you think guys are going to be able to feel more than comfortable, even though it's new, even by game 2? I mean, game 1's going to be game 1, and there is some familiarity. At least Minnesota will have it because they faced the Syracuse 3-3-5 in the bowl game. It's what Coach White ran, and Minnesota found a way to hang on and win that ball game, but it was not an offensive masterpiece. It was, quite frankly, a struggle for the Gophers to get anything going. 24 carries, 78 yards, a boatload of TFLs, and it really came down to some special teams, bad third down conversions. It's Minnesota's defense that set them up with some short fields, honestly. And that's how things won out for Minnesota to get another 9-win season for Mr. Fleck. But I just love the personnel options Nebraska has. Guys got to stay healthy through camp and get locked in as summer is going to start here. The end of May for these guys, a little more than a week. They'll be back at it getting ready for summer. But how big of a strength do you think the defense can be? I don't expect it needs to be the strength, but it needs to be kind of more into form like things rounded out last year. The defense really played fast. They weren't always perfect. They weren't always great. But, man, they were able to fly around to the football. And you saw, and listen, we go back to that Iowa game quite a bit. You saw Nebraska get really aggressive off that second level with some edge blitzes, and that did wonders for Nebraska being able to force some turnovers against Iowa. There's going to be bucketfuls of that, you would presume, with this 3-3-5 alignment.
And what I see with this defense is a defense that has the capability, the potential to be the side of the ball that can carry your offense as they get some issues hammered out early in the year. If you don't think there's going to be issues with this offense early in the year, you're fooling yourself. That's always how it happens with a first-year head coach installing a new system, especially offensively. There's going to be some growing pains. There's going to be some shoot yourself in the foot type moments early in the season.
There'll be uncertainty because you're running it for the first time.
And you hope to eliminate those as the year goes on, but you need the other side of the ball to pick you up. You know what? Get you a couple extra possessions early in the season, generate a couple turnovers, make a big special teams play, because I don't want to leave the special teams out of it. Like, those are what you need in order to carry your offense early in the year and give them the time they need to really turn into a well-oiled machine. And I look at this defense, and I look at how this defense and how some of the experienced guys within that projected starting 11 have already shifted defensive philosophies going last year from Chenander to Bush mid-season, how quickly they were able to pick that up, and just the experience that you have with guys that have done that. I mean, look at what I consider to be some projected starters, and Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmacher, Luke Reimer, Isaac Gifford. Maybe we'll throw Nick Henrich in there as well. Mm-hmm. Quentin Newsom,
your secondaries.
There's a lot of guys, and there's a guy, at least one guy at every single level of that defense that's been around, that's played Big Ten football, that knows what it takes to succeed in this league. That I think this defense has the potential. They're probably not going to be their finished product, what they are by the end of the year in game one. That's probably a guarantee, just with how first-year head coaching transitions go and how scheme adjustments go. But I think this defense can be ready to go week one and be a side of the ball that can go and win you a football game against Minnesota. And I think Nebraska, rightfully so, is going to be the underdog. But if Nebraska is going to pull off the upset, it's going to start with that defense making some plays and getting some extra possessions for the offense. And whenever I look at what this defense is right now, with the experience and with the guys that have played multiple systems and have adjusted well to that in their college careers at Nebraska, I think Nebraska has the potential to have this defense start off in a good place by week one.
Very fair. And I think, between Robinson and Nash, that'll be big. You've got the young pups that showed well, right? And they can be a difference maker getting after the quarterback. But really that back seven or eight, I mean, you've got Omar and Newsom and Buford and Hartzog and Farmer and Gifford. You've got Buddha. I mean, you have a ton of options you feel good about. There's some youth you could go with as well. You lost a little bit in the portal with Wynn, but there's still some younger guys that you felt like this is where I want to lead and go with when it came time to the exit interviews with a guy like Wynn saying, look, you're going to be part of the rotation, but there's some guys we think are ahead of you. And listen, the big question, and it's been a concern, has been, can Nebraska hold up against the run? I think they'll be okay with it. And the key is, Elijah, they can't be on the field for 20 minutes out of a second half. Okay? I mean, think of Nebraska defenses. Even the one with Garrett and those guys that put in incredible moments the second half this decade, at least the last half of the decade, against Michigan State. You had JoJo, you had Nelly, you had Reimer. I mean, you had some dudes playing great football, and you still couldn't do enough. And the residual pounding you take in this league makes November just a straight-up death march.
Well, and I think that's a good litmus test, though, for where truly we think this defense could be by the start of the year, is we're sitting here saying, man, you get worried if the offense puts them in a bad spot, which I think that's a net positive when you say that, because it means, you know what, if the offense doesn't put them in a bad spot, we feel good about it.
Good luck driving the field.
Good luck driving the field, exactly.
Or, dare I say it, the big play part of this discussion, where are you going to get popped? And big plays happen to really good defenses. Look at Iowa. Look how great Iowa was all year. They were generationally insanely talented. And how did Nebraska win that game? They had two monster plays. I mean, they scored 24 points against an Iowa team that gave up, 9 all year in conference, like gave up 9 a game in conference? Mm-hmm. Well, we recovered 2 punt fumbles. We better kick a field goal now, right? I mean, that's how opposing offenses scored on the Iowa defense. And Nebraska, because of their mismatch, found a guy like Palmer deep, and it worked well. So, Nebraska's defense can be a strength. They can be a difference.
But where I go is kind of similar to you. If Nebraska opens up against Minnesota and you're seeing a lot of, well, first down, we're going to run the ball for 1 yard. Second down, we're going to run the ball for 2 yards. And now it's 3rd and 7. If Nebraska's consistently finding themselves, their offense, I should say, in 3rd and 7s on their own half of the field, and in the first game of the season, now I get really, really worried about what this Husker defense is going to have to endure in that game.
Especially because Minnesota is just going to keep lining up and running it. They're going to run an RPO. They're going to find the tight end. Their quarterback they switched to for the youth movement is pretty mobile. He's not a great thrower, but he extends plays and can hit you downfield. So, no, he's a guy that is talented. Now, they don't have Mo to lean on, but it feels like Minnesota just grows running backs behind a really good offensive line. So there's a bit of a rebuild with Minnesota, but I go back to that. I mean, that's an 8 o'clock kickoff. Fox will have national coverage. It's a really good opportunity. I mean, not only for Nebraska to get off on the right foot, but you love the fact you're not getting Minnesota later in the year after they've stabilized and have gotten better, because they typically do. I think Nebraska will get better. I think by the mid-season point or the end of the season, I think the defense can be really, really a big-time strength. Guys got to be able to settle in on their role. And the thing that I noticed when I would watch the Syracuse defense a couple of times this year, they were on either late or early, but you may give up 4 or 5 on first down on a run, but there's a 2-yard loss on 2nd and 5. So you're back to 3rd and 7. So that was all right. I didn't mind just where all the traffic was coming from with Syracuse, and I'm trying to make that portable to Lincoln, Nebraska from upstate New York.
And a question that still remains to me for this defense is, and this still goes along with the conversation we've been we've kind of been having all segment long. What does the rotation look like for this defense? How many guys do you actually have ready for Big Ten play? Because I think there's a handful of guys on this defense that are going to be ready, and that starting 11 looks like a defense that can find success in the Big Ten. But you look a little bit deeper on it, and you go, well, is A.J. Rollins 6 months removed from moving over from tight end? Is he going to be ready to go to get big snaps?
He'll be ready for you on third down, I think. I mean, if it's an obvious not that he can't do work against the run, but what he's shown the ability to do to get moved over to that side of the ball is use hands and have a good burst. So him and Tagovailoa, both guys had some tackles for loss.
But are they going to be ready for the rigors of a Big Ten season? And are they going to be ready for the rigors of a Big Ten opponent week 1? Because you're not going to make it with just your 3 or 4 defensive linemen that you think are your top guys. You're not going to make it through a full Big Ten game. Like, maybe you can make it against North Dakota with 3 or 4 guys that you trust, but you're not going to make it against the Minnesota offensive line with just those 3 or 4 guys. How are your second stringers going to be ready? It is, again, to our point about strain from the offense, are you going to have 30 string guys playing?
Did you just go strain on me?
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Can you feel it?
We're going to see the strain.
We're going to see the strain. You ask them to do what they're capable of doing versus putting them in situations, or you coach them up to be able to survive. Athlon is out with their all Big Ten first and second team. No Nebraska names on the first team offense. Not really a shock, honestly. When you got Corum and Braylon Allen as your 2 running backs. Edwards, your all-purpose guy. Marvin Harrison Jr. is your wideout. Isaiah Williams is super good. Cade Stover, your tight end from Ohio State. No Nebraska names on the first team defense. You can go to second team defense, however.
Let me guess. Newsome.
No.
Reimer
at linebacker.
Okay.
Reimer at linebacker. So third team, let's go to third team. Still no Nebraska names on first, second, or third team offenses. Third team defense, you have Quentin Newsome on the third team preseason projection list. So something to shoot for. Maybe Thomas Fidoni's taking mental notes.
Yeah,
right now.
And who are some guys you could see by the end of the year if things go how Nebraska fans hope that they will go? Which are those guys that you could see making one of those top 3 teams?
Guys that need to be first, second, or third team. Ty Robinson, Reimer, Newsome. One from each level. Okay. I think Hartzog's got enough talent to be there. I think Buford's a really explosive guy. So you've got some options. Farmer's played in this league for 100 years, and when he's been in, at least during the COVID year, all he did was pick the football off. Offensively, it'd be really nice if you're Nebraska to have a healthy Big Teddy make a first, second, or third team list at tackle. Have your big friend from Minnesota make that jump.
Ben Hart, yeah.
Bryce is a guy.
The names I look at, though, with that
how about Scott? I mean, Scott's kind of coming in with some cred.
I was thinking Scott, and a guy a lot of people have forgotten about, Nuruddin. I think he's a guy that's put in a lot of work in his year off, and I wonder what his ceiling's going to be. But the main guys I look at are the guys that are going to be running this football a lot for Nebraska, Jeff Sims and Anthony Grant. If you can get one of those 2 guys on a top 3 team, that means very, very good things for what the Husker offense is next year.
Well, and listen, I mean, it's not – you just don't know a ton about Sims other than he's kind of a wow factor. But they got McCord, the Ohio State kid, is third team. Conference quarterback.
Guy who's never played a snap in the Big Ten.
McCarthy's your first team, because he is. Little Tua at Maryland. He's coming back and super talented. But no, Anthony Grant has enough talent, if he gets some help, to be a first, second, or third team guy. Jay Moore's on the way.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duder
championship out at Oak Hill. And what a weekend it was. And you've got Koepka, but of course Michael Block stole the show as well. Rory did well. But some thoughts with the second major weekend.
Yeah, still not used to having the PGA in May. It just feels
right.
Feels weird. I think this was a third year, I believe they've had it in May. So, yeah, still it's like, whoa, we got a major this week. And usually those usually don't sneak up on me. But that golf course was a test. I thought single digits was going to win it, and just barely 9 under being the winning score by Brooks. But it was just really good golf. You know, they got challenged with cold weather because obviously you're damn near in Canada in May, you know, in upstate New York. So, you know, you're going to have some issues. They had the rain all day Saturday, and then it was perfect. It was perfect on them yesterday. Just picture perfect scoring conditions for the most part. I mean, that's one of the toughest par 70 golf courses you'll ever play. I really did like Brooks going in this week. Played well, obviously had the 54-hole lead going to the Masters just a month ago, and let that slip away. And he made some comments saying, hey, that's not going to happen again. And you're like, okay, well, let's see. But just knowing, you know, guys in those type of situations, and he's won majors before, obviously with 2 PGAs and 2 U.S. Opens previously, so he knows what he's doing. We kind of get away from it. He struggled the last couple of years with injuries and let that Masters slip away. And he put his foot on the pedal, man, and he started out, he was 200 through 3 holes yesterday and didn't really look back. Had made a couple bogeys in there. You know, Victor Hovland did get a kind of a bad break, and that ball plugged in the lip and ended up making double. I would have, you know, if that didn't happen, and maybe he just makes a bogey, how different that outcome would have made. But either way, you know, Victor's been right there the last handful of majors, and Brooks, he's finally healthy and getting back to himself, and now he has, you know, 5 majors, 3 PGAs to go and 2 U.S. Opens. So it was really good golf, a fantastic golf course, and now you just got the U.S. Open here in a few weeks.
Jay, is Koepka the best in the world in your opinion as of right now?
He's up there. I know the world rankings won't give it to him just because of the whole live situation. I know that's a whole nother discussion to be had. You know, those guys are still damn good. I don't care if they're playing 54-hole shotgun starts and in shorts and riding in whatever carts, whatever they're doing, and having fun and playing music out there. So he is. I mean, right now he's playing his tail off. He's up there with, you know, I think Dustin Johnson still have a hell of a player. You know, Rory still have a hell of a player. John Rahm still a hell of a player, and you know he didn't have his best stuff this week either. So it's hard. You know, golf is one of those things where you got to capitalize when you're playing good. And it's one of those games as well as when it's going well, you get the bounces, the putts kind of lip in there, you know, the breaks go your way. And when it's going bad, you know, those putts slip out and you get the kicks the wrong way into the rough or into a bunker. And right now he's getting all the nice bounces. And he's just playing good. So yeah, he's up there, man. He's up until he was injured. I mean, he was easily in the top 5 players in the world. He had some knee injuries and made some, you know, he switched club manufacturers. So that takes a little time as well, but he is definitely one of the best. You know, I'd still put him in the top 5 in the world without a doubt.
Jay is 6 to make that 17-18 at Oak Hill. Just a murderous finish. Is that as tough of a 1-2 punch out there with some of the majors or some of the courses?
Yeah, this PGA was set up more like a U.S. Open. I mean, just with the rough. You know, I think 6, 7, 8, maybe even 9, or it was probably the 4 toughest, you know, stretch of holes there on that golf course. But there's double bogey everywhere on that golf course. Just whether the rough, or you know what your ball does in a penalty area, or even a bunker. So that thing was, I mean, it's such a good golf course. I've never played it, but a par 70 that stretches over 7,400 yards. It can be. That's hard. You don't have many par 5s to try to capitalize on. You know, those par 5s you have out there, you know, most golfers think, okay, those are birdie holes. And heck, some of those you're just trying to make par and get out of Dodge. So that's one of the toughest ones that, you know, that they play year in and year out for major championships. And I know they've had other PGAs. I know Duffner won it just 10 years ago when it was their last time. And And I think there's have U.S. Opens. I think Trevino maybe have won a U.S. Open there back in the 70s. You have to check my golf history on that, but it's one of the best tests of golf that you'll have, and it could host a PGA or a U.S. Open, no problem.
Jay, who made the rule up? If you get a hole-in-one, you got to buy the drinks.
That is.
It's been long-standing. It seems unfair.
Yeah, it does. It does. I've always said I'm more than happy to pay that tab. So this last fall in November, I made my first hole-in-one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I was down and playing in a mid-am event. Mid-ams are amateurs that are 25 and older. And it was down in Birmingham, Alabama. And it was a practice round. I hadn't played the golf course before, but in a practice round, our fifth hole, playing with a couple other guys from Nebraska. We all went down together and rented a house, and I make a hole-in-one, about a 5-iron from 210, and goes in. But the best, so I've always said I'm happy to pay that bill. But this golf course, this golf tournament is why it's one of the best tournaments to play. And once you're on site, you don't pay for anything, food, alcohol included. So that was the cheapest hole-in-one that I guess I've only had one. That was the cheapest that you can get by on. But I've been around some guys who have racked up some tabs, and they say, screw it, I'll just buy a keg. And they do. They'll say, $400 for a keg, whatever it may be. That's what you're getting. If you want to drink, you're getting this beer. So it's a goofy rule, but I tell you what, I know most golfers are pretty happy to pay that bill. And I've also heard stories about guys making hole-in-ones as well, and they say, you don't say a damn thing to anyone when we get inside because they're cheap, so they want to pay the tab.
Thrifty, so Jay. Like, hey, thrifty's the word we use.
Right. So they're like, don't say a word. And a lot of times too, most golf courses as well have a hole-in-one club. So you usually put $5 in a pot for every hole-in-one. So it might pay out $1,000 for people to get a hole-in-one. So that'll help offset some of those costs too. So it's I'm just glad I had one. And then seeing Michael Block make one yesterday on hole 15, just his crazy Cinderella ride that he had, that was fairy tale stuff. There should be that could be a Disney movie about 10 years from now.
Jane, I think it helps that Michael Block has to pay the tab with his $275,000+ in winnings that he made over the weekend, and now gets an invite to the Charles Schwab Challenge next week as well. So I think he's doing fine for himself. I think he's going to be willing to pay that after the phenomenal weekend he had. But first, just tell me about the kind of pressure that was on him, being the Cinderella story going into the weekend. He gets to play with Justin Rose, and then he gets to play with Rory on Sunday. The emotions that have to be on display for a guy like Michael Block there is just incredible. And to show the composure to still finish top 15 and qualify for next year's PGA. What was your reaction to just the weekend he had and how much pressure he was dealing with all weekend long?
Yeah, I don't know Michael Block. I've known of him. He's, one of the best club professionals. Now there's a difference between being a club pro and a touring pro. So he's teaching lessons out of a public golf course in Mission Viejo, California, every week. And he said, it's $150 for like an hour and a half lesson. He's going around and playing in California section events, just like all the other section pros. And then, you play well enough in your still section events, you get to qualify for the National Club Pro. And then the top 20 guys from the National Club Pro they qualify for the U.S. PGA, the PGA Championship. And so he's won that club, the National Club Pro, before. I think that's what that was the most money he's ever made on the golf course, was $75,000, which is damn good money for winning a golf tournament. But yeah, this one was, man, I don't know if there's pressure, but you're kind of free rolling. I mean, this is going to be the most money you're going to make. You're in the PGA. You've made the cut. I don't know if he's made the cuts before. I think he's made a cut. I think it was his 5th or 6th PGA Championship he's qualified for to play in. I don't know if he made the cuts any of the previous one, but once you make the cut, you're like, man, this is free money here. I'm going to make some sort of money. Hopefully, you make enough to cover your expenses for the week. But just to capitalize on, I think there was definitely more pressure in the situation he was, because I know if he somehow could have gotten to the top 5 or maybe even the top 4, that qualifies you for the Masters. So there would be some pressure there as well. So just knowing that and knowing that, you top 15, you're automatically in. Don't have to qualify for the USPGA for the National Club Pro. So a lot, I'm sure, was going on, but he hung in there tough, man. I mean, he shot his only over par round of the week was on Sunday. I mean, that is just fantastic golf for a guy. He doesn't really hit it. He doesn't blow it by anyone. He's 46 years old. Just kind of plays normal. He just played good golf, good solid golf, made some putts, made a hole in one, and had himself a week.
Tell me the razor thin margin between a guy like Rory or Zalatoris and a guy like Block. What keeps you from making that jump to being a pro on tour?
Well, I'm sure he tried at one time. Went through Q school. I don't know his background. I'm sure he was a really good high school player, college player. Money has a lot to do with it. Q school is expensive. I think to pay for everything for Q school, you're looking at about $5,000. Travel and everything's expensive as well. I know a handful of guys that are either playing on the Korn Ferry Tour or did it, and they're spending anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000 a year on travel expenses, hotels, food.
So you need
all this
sponsors,
stuff.
yeah.
You're right, and you obviously you have your sponsors as well, but if you're not making, and that's the hard thing about golf too is, whether you're a professional athlete in baseball, basketball, football, your travel expenses, all your stuff is kind of covered. You just get paid. You really don't have to spend anything. That's not the way with golf. You're paying for entry fees into state opens and mini tour events that cost you $1,000 to $1,500 for entry fees into some of those. And if you don't make any money, and unless you place in the top 5 in most of those events, you don't make a whole lot of money whatsoever. You're definitely in the red if you're not in the top 5. So it's just hard. It just costs a lot of money, and the timing has to be right. But you just have to have enough financial backing to make it work. And some people just don't, and that's just the way it is. And then they become a club pro or get into the golf business because that's just what they know and that's what they're comfortable doing. And then if you're still competitive enough, you can still do the section stuff like he did, and hopefully you can qualify for a PGA Championship and maybe even a U.S. Open, because that's obviously open to anyone to go qualify for. But it's hard. There are guys that talent is exponent. They're just phenomenal athletes on the golf course, but some guys just have the help financially, and that's what you need. And it's because it's such a hard game, and it's hard to capitalize when the chips are against you. But he has the talent and the mindset, obviously, to still play some damn good golf.
Jay Moore's with us, Black Shirt Husker NFLer, Hail Varsity Radio. Get to some football now, Jay. Thanks for talking golf with us. And pretty good story by On3, their national writer, DJ Pickrell, was commenting on Tony White, the Nebraska defense. I know we spend a lot of time on it, but the topic was recipe for success, and we've hit on the downhill element in the Big Ten, the Michigans, the Iowas, the Minnesotas, the Wisconsins, just how physical the league is. And from a matchup standpoint, touch on just how much movement by defense or even a third safety can screw with an opposing offense. That pre-snap read for the quarterback, for the running back, and how that can be an element along with toughness, being able to tackle, and the team speed factor that Nebraska really wants to have.
Yeah, that's getting, essentially 8 linebackers or DBs on the field. That's going to make you more, get some more speed on the field within that 3-3-5. I know you can fluctuate a little bit and bring in another interior guy or defensive end, whatever it may be. But the 3-3-5 is just chaos. It's constant movement from the D-line. You're blitzing linebackers on almost every play. So you're going to have potentially 5 to 6 guys around the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball. You're going to have D linemen crisscrossing, stunting, you name it. Safeties are coming down. So they're making it tough your pre-snap read might be one thing, but then you're like, whoa, this is vastly different. And that just makes you second guess yourself. And from a quarterback, from your read, from a secondary read, whether, you're reading a 1 high safety, a 2 high safety, cover 3, cover 4, cover 6, cover 9, whatever it may be. They really make you earn it. You better know your stuff within this, with all the vast movements you can have within a 3-3-5. But I think the interesting thing is just how they play the run. We saw a little bit of that during the spring game. I don't know how exotic it was, but I mean, they're coming. They got guys moving everywhere. I mean, they got nose tackles looping all the way to the outside against run plays, and they got linebackers coming and they're filling holes, and they got A gap blitzes with the linebackers and B gaps, and all sorts of stuff. There's guys coming from everywhere. So that was pretty interesting to see. But I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me from what I could tell from the spring game was their ability to stay under control too. Because that's one thing, was you can be chaotic and run around with your hair on fire, but you can also, doing that, you can kind of run yourself out of plays and be out of control. But it seemed like a lot of guys they really were stressing, breaking down, lowering your pad level, tackling right. They just seemed a lot of guys were in the right position. They're never out of control. So that's one thing I thought was very impressive so far, just through one spring, was they were in control, and we're never running themselves out of the play, because you can do that really quickly, especially when you're blitzing a lot of movements, a lot of stunting going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gonna be fun to see that this thing kind of develop and see how this evolves within the Big Ten. You don't see a whole lot of the 3-3-5. TCU had so much success with this last year, but it's a rare defense. But if it works, it works, and hopefully it works for us, and continue to recruit the guys that they need and develop guys that they need to play this spot. But I do like the fact that our depth's probably at our back end there between the linebackers and secondary. So I think that's going to fit really, really well when those you potentially have your 8 best guys back there.
Jay, how I define the 3-3-5, and you can correct me if you have a different opinion here, but I see it as a high-risk, high-reward defense where you're trying to make splash plays, especially in the offensive backfield. And while that can be exciting for Husker fans, I want to get your more expert defensive take than mine on what some of the pitfalls of this defense could be. What do you worry about with the 3-3-5 in particular? Not necessarily this year, but just the overall scheme as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's high risk, high reward. You're not too far off. I just see all the movement, and if some guys just get out of place a little bit, it's not a 3 or 4 yard gain. It's probably going to be a 14 or 15 to 20 yard gain, and depending on what coverage you're playing in the back end too. You get your secondary stuck in some man coverage situations and their backs against the ball. It could be 6 points really quick. So that's one thing that you should, I think you have to be concerned about. But with those big, the risk of giving up the big play, obviously you have the ability to make big plays in defense as well. And you saw some of that, the tackle for losses in the spring game, and that's what they're going to live behind. They're going to have guys coming free. It's just hopefully they can make the play. But you're not too far off with that's why I was alluding to you got to be under control. Mm-hmm. Just so that can happen. If you do, misstep or misread something, you're still in control where you're not, diving in this up in a gap or, taking yourself out of a play. You're able to kind of get yourself out of it and making sure that's not a 20 yard gain and you get them down for 6-7 yards. So that's going to be a learning process. But again, a lot of movement stuff going on. You're going to have some issues where they're probably going to break free once or twice.
The fear is the sacrificing, not always, but sometimes the size to get more speed on the field. But Nebraska's been able to do that in the past and make it work. It's really about scouting, correct, and personnel?
Yeah, without a doubt. And just knowing what you can do and what you can't do, and playing your cards right, and trying to it's really just coming down to putting your guys in the best position to do what they can do the best. Mm-hmm. Don't ask them to do something they can't or that's too risky. If you're Wisconsin, I know is changing their offense, but in years past, what Wisconsin is. It's it's 21, 22 personnel. And it's outside zone and stretch plays and boots off of that. So let's get your guys in the best position to play those plays. And let's not, get your guys running out of the play and causing, trying to do too much. So I think it's just understanding that. No, that won't be an issue, whatsoever. this coaching staff is going to put these guys in the best position to win. And I think just understanding what you can do and what you can't do is the most important thing, especially as from a new staff. And I don't think overcomplicating as well it won't be a problem. I think that's always a staff's issue when they come in. They kind of they tend to overcomplicate. They want to some coaches like to talk about, want to show the guys how smart they are. But that doesn't really do any good if your guys can't comprehend and take it to the field. Good coaches can simplify things and can make it very easy to retain and take it from the meeting room to the walkthroughs to the field. If you have guys struggling because you're talking so many schemes and different verbiage and all that stuff, you're gonna have guys struggle to take that through that process. So I didn't see that so far in through only spring practice and spring ball. I think they've done a great job of simplifying things to make sure these guys are able to play fast but also in control.
Jay Moore's with us, Blackshirt Husker NFLer at JMoore44, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up. Jay, we'll let you go, but thanks for a few minutes today.
Yep. Thanks, boys.
Love talking ball with Jay Moore. Good stuff from him. Coach Huffman in hour one. We'll wind down a Monday. Loaded Tuesday for you. We'll tell you who's on the show tomorrow. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Buckle up. A message from the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. Reminder, watch party, Nebraska. We're down at Rosie's, downtown Lincoln. Downtown Rosie's, Thursday, 4 to 6.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
So I'm doing research here during the commercial break for a road trip to South Dakota.
Ooh.
Baseball tournament in Rapid City. Our faithful listener Brennan's out there, Spearfish, which is about 40 minutes to the west. Deadwood's not far from there. When I was working in radio at Dakota State, when I first started out about 20 years ago, we took about 3 trips out to western South Dakota, the Black Hills, because you had Black Hills State, you had School of Mines, and then the state tournament was always out west. So I'm just doing a little research, and just drop the kid off with the rest of the team, and I'll head west.
Go do some golfing, go do some fishing.
Do some golfing, and I'm pretty sure I lost $100 at Costner's Casino in Deadwood.
Kevin Costner?
Yeah, he had a casino out there because that's where he shot Dances with Wolves.
Oh, I haven't seen the movie.
But I think he may have gotten out of the casino business. Don't know. Or a hotel, restaurant. Restaurant's probably the right answer. So, no, I'm fascinated. I haven't been in South Dakota in 100 years, man. But looking forward to it.
Well, get this. This is on a completely different wavelength. But while we're talking with Jay there, I took my dog on a walk around Branched Oak yesterday, and it was lovely. Lovely get around Branched Oak. Lovely weather yesterday morning. It was awesome. But I don't know how much time you spent in the great outdoors this spring, Schmitty. The ticks have been out of this world.
I'm a little frightened because the 2 pups were laying in the shade today, and they were outside for about 2 hours. And I try and rub her, like the left side of Gertie's mane, and I feel something, but she freaks out when I touch it.
Probably a tick?
I don't know. Probably something.
Yeah,
her big sister gave her. I don't know.
Pulled a fair number of ticks off of dogs in the past 2 weeks personally, but I just had to pull one off of myself while we were talking with Jay. I found it on my stomach. I don't know how I missed it for 24 hours, but...
You gotta wear a hat, dude.
I did wear a hat.
You did wear a hat
Not
walking
like
around?
a big hat. It was just like a ball cap like one you're wearing right now. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, no, but... I found... we were out at Wilderness Park here in town, and at one point we hit this one section of the walk where I legitimately had 5 ticks on my left leg crawling up my legs and 4 on my right. Like, I haven't seen a tick year like this ever.
That's awful. I went golfing yesterday, and let's just say the back 9 was much better than the first 9 with Iowa Russ. Played well, back 9. It was good. Loved it. So you get the sweep tonight?
The Nuggets?
Oh, yeah.
Don't ask me. Whenever I picked steak and a beer on Friday, I was clearly just
That was awesome.
awful. So don't you tell me. You tell me there's going to be a Lakers going to save one tonight so the Nuggets can win, please.
It's -3.5 LA. I hate that number.
Yeah. No.
Absolutely hate it. I hate it if I'm a Laker fan and I'm laying the 3.5.
Well, Stephen A. Smith said something good in the post-game coverage the other day, which was there comes a point in every playoff series where both teams know who the better team is, and he said after Game 3,
Say screw it.
both teams know that the Nuggets are the better team. So the question is do the Lakers go out with a fight or do they go out with a whimper? And I think with LeBron and AD on the team, I think they go out with a fight.
Sure.
So I wouldn't be shocked to see them win tonight, especially if the Nuggets don't come out playing as hard as they have been in the first 3 games. If they think the series is wrapped up, I could see the Lakers sending it back to Denver where the Nuggets wrap it up, but the Nuggets are the better team. It's as simple as that.
Boston looks just inconsolable right now.
Dead in the water.
Tomorrow, we are loaded up. Mitch Sherman, Rex Burkhead to tell you about Team Jack Golf Tournament, and Jabba Chamberlain. We'll talk to you tomorrow at 4 on Hail Varsity.